But if you hit something or somebody hits you, I'm thinking, okay, this is gonna be like Grand Theft Auto, the car flipper thing. The longer you go through your car journeys and builds, you like to think you get surprised less or underestimate things less. But the King Zero V12 supercar that I'm doing, which is a ground up build, my first steel coach built car, has absolutely shocked me with how time consuming it actually is. I underestimated that car so greatly, and every time that I thought I got past where I underestimated it, it just came back and just smacked me back down again. But some time ago, I mentioned starting that build. And I think myself and so many other car aficionados, as well as art lovers, were inspired by Marcello Gandini's original masterpiece, which was the Lancia Stratos Zero prototype, which is the 1970, I think, Turin show car, if memory serves correctly. But the original Stratos Zero prototype was one that, legend has it, was done by them at Bertoni because they wanted to get Lancia to let them build a car. And this is the car that they built where you lay down in the windshield folds open, you lay down in it, most avant-garde car you've ever seen, and they drove it to the Lancia headquarters and just drove it right underneath the parking gate. And that was kind of the legend that has it. And of course that gave birth to an amazing design relationship to the Lancia Stratos that we all adore from rally racing fame and road racing. Kind of a mythological car in its own right. But the prototype was something that was legend, just myth. It was such a big deal and inspired toys for decades. But it was never so prominent. It was like something that was just a legend. And it stuck with me. And I'd be getting to the point where I really want to do my own car. And that one popped out because it was something that I can't get out of my mind as an artist, as a car lover. The place where I guess I got the gift of being able to appreciate the original art so much more, but also knocked me down so hard was, it looks simple. You just think, it's a wedge. It's got a triangle on the back. It's a mid-engine car. It doesn't even have doors. It's just got a windshield that folds open. This'll be easy. No. For me, in building the chassis, one of the things I wanted to do with this build was showcase that you can build a supercar. That the thing that makes cars amazing is the artist. It is the designer. It's the craftsmanship. It's the engineering that goes into it. It's not necessarily the materials. Nowadays carbon fiber is in fact expensive, or you have titanium, or you're doing interesting machining and such, but it's the art, it's the legend that really makes something. And I kind of wanted to showcase that. So that's when I bought the blown up Porsche Boxer for $2,000 to use the suspension and some of the bulkheads and the transaxle. And I bought an early 90s BMW 750 IL with the V12 in it that I wanted to use because, of course, if I'm going to make a car that emulates that time and inspired by the art, I want it to be what I consider the production supercar version. So of course it has to have a V12 to be proper. And I scaled it up a little bit, but I wanted to keep it true to the art of the time period in Italy. But the car's decidedly simple. It's very subtle curves and edges and shapes. And it's virtually simple curves. And a simple curve being where it only changes on one axis. A compound curve is where it's two axes. So for instance, a sphere, it curves this way, but it also curves this way. Versus if you have something that's a cylinder, that's just a simple curve the whole way around. And when you take a sheet of metal and just bend it, that's a simple curve. But when you have to start hammering it and English wheeling it or putting in a die, that's more of a compound curve. And I'm thinking, oh, it's simple. It just has a tiny bit of crown. And what blew me away is when I actually got to the point where what I'd done to do the big drawings, I had full scale car paper that I used my in-laws projector that I borrowed aggressively in a nice way to project drawings, to do these drawings to be able to get the lines right. And then I would start creating a one-off steel wire buck on the actual chassis so I knew where I could cut my panels and start making them. But as I did that, it just kept unraveling petals of a flower, just so many layers to the amount of time it took to create that I feel stupid by how much I underestimated went into that, just the man hours and the art. Because something that even me with building cars and being in art and design and fabrication, I vastly underestimated just the precision and the complexity of it. Complexity in its perfect, a simple form, but trying to get those subtle balances right were just incredibly time consuming. But you learn as you go. You do the best job you can. And There were some subtle aspects of it where some curves didn't look right, or the balance wasn't quite right, and I had to shave the nose down, or I learned welding and keeping the heat control in it, so your metal that you had perfect doesn't warp and then suddenly get all out of shape, and then you're working with slapping files and spoons and hammers for days. It goes on forever, weeks and days, and you come home filthy every night. Your feet do go in front of the wheels, and I know that because when you lay back in this car, and you're laying way back with your feet are actually slightly higher than your butt is, like some F1 cars. But the big key to that is the original car, as is my car, has to have McPherson struts here that come up, because the upper A-arms would be where your legs are. So the driver and the passenger sit literally between the front wheelbase, and your legs, the steering rack goes underneath here, and your lower pickup points. So you are very much part of the suspension, and in a way that you really don't want to have an issue. So when I built the inner structure of the car, I thought, okay, something unpleasant could happen, so how do I redirect things with this? Obviously with any car, if you drive it straight into a building, that's not good. But if you hit something or somebody hits you, I'm thinking, okay, this is gonna be like Grand Theft Auto, the car flipper thing. So let's make this strong enough that if somebody went over top of you, they go over top of you and not just squish you like a pancake. So that was a concern. And then also in front of your feet, how can I build structure that there's some crushability, but also to deflect it? So if I did hit boulders, fire hydrants, things like that, I built tubing in it in such a way that the coach belt bodywork would deform, and it would actually put you up over something like that to deflect. So I guess my safety technique for designing this was not so much to worry about good crush protection. There's some in the back, but it was more like, I don't know, good martial art. Just take the energy and deflect it somewhere else. So that was my safety philosophy with the design of this car. This is a car that you dream of. You dream of what it must be like to drive, but it's so evocative to just look at it. For me, the imagery of seeing it and thinking it and building it and designing it and actually bringing the form out is a massive part of the dream, because it's bringing something that you never got to see and making it exist. So that in itself was one of the long-lasting dreams for me. But as a driver, the other dream is, what must that be like? To sit at the front of the wheels with your feet, where you're looking at your feet through a windshield like that, with just this little side windows like this, and just tucked down. And in a way, it's, for a car guy, it's the dream of flying low. It's something like a V12 street luge, and that is just hugely alluring to me, especially with having straight pipes of a V12 behind you rolling. So it brings together so many of the dreams of a car enthusiast of, can you imagine Le Mans Straight at Le Mans in the early 70s with like a Ferrari 512S or a Porsche 917 at just full song? So you get some of that aspect of what must it be like to just fly without all that. But then just the absurd, absolute, just unfiltered art of it. So it's all a dream. I do know the car's gonna drive well, because the suspension is solidified, the chassis, it's stiff, it's right, everything is affixed well. Got some amazing coilovers in it that are adjustable. So you're utilizing Porsche geometry. That's gonna be a fantastic car. And the BMW V12 is a fantastic power plant. It's gonna sound great. Even just stock, naturally aspirated, it's gonna be great fun. We've got the five-speed transaxle, a tiny suede Momo steering wheel. So it's going to be a good driving car. I'm not going to say it's going to have good visibility. So it will be important to drive in a manner to accentuate the visibility that you do have, and in a way to downplay the large amount of visibility you don't have. Obviously in this, it was a fun tongue-in-cheek thing with Avalon King, which has been hugely supportive of it, and that's in fact why I named my build the King Zero. So that's been an amazing collaboration because of how they've really supported the car community and everybody as a company. And I've been appreciative because, one, I actually love the product. I use it on all my cars. And it's just great because I'm lazy and I don't like having to wash my cars a lot. So it keeps them cleaner a lot longer. I felt so bad because I fully expected to be completely finished with this build months ago. I literally did. I could have built 1.5 or 2 cars already in the time it's taken me to get this build to this point. And even just now, we're only just getting it to the point where all the metal panels are in place. And then from there, when they're on place, and then I get it all straightened out as well as can be, and the lid works and the glass is all there, and then I'm gonna have to rust proof it, fill it, and paint it. Then you can do the interior and plumbing. So it actually is on par to get done this summer. And there's an amazing event coming up called the American Speed Festival. It's gonna be an inaugural, kind of like Goodwood, but a little more American twist up at M1 Concours in Pontiac, Michigan. And as an example, I am so excited about getting to, in a way, partially debut that car and drive it on track there. Because one of my heroes that inspired me as a young person, even to this day, to do all the car builds I've ever done in the engineering was Jim Hall with the Chaparral race cars in the 1960s. He was an engineer and he did some of the most incredible avant-garde engineering feats for race cars at the time. He was building composite monocoque chassis 20 years before Ferrari did in Formula One. 20 years. And actually Jim Hall is bringing a bunch of his original Chaparrals to this event. So at the very least, and then there's no very least, I must get this done this year because it's gonna be very exciting. I know there's a lot of people watching. So I'm just looking forward for the art that inspired me from the past in Italy to be able to, highlight that art and create something that is what I believe, if the prototype ever got to be created into a supercar to actually drive, this is exactly what that would be. So looking forward to that to share, everybody, and just so happy to be collaborating with Avalon King on it.